Hi everyone and welcome to a new video on the CBI channel. In this tutorial series we're creating a login/authentication app with Python Django in the backend and React.js in the frontend. This is not the first video in this series. In fact, we've already done 12 before, in which we've completed an initial setup focused on registering and logging in users, and we also did the password resets in the backend. In this video, we're going to continue and we're going to make sure that our React.js frontend can make all of the requests for resetting passwords to the backend. And to do that, we're going to be following 6 main steps. First, we're going to create the route and the page for making password reset requests so that it's all set up inside of our frontend. Next, we're going to be adding a link to our login page to make sure that users can find the password reset inside of our application. Then we are going to make some changes to the password reset page, and we're going to add an API call that, based on the email input, is going to send the email to the user. Once that initial first part is working, we're going to continue and create the route and the page for actually resetting the password. And we're going to make sure that after the password has been successfully resetted, the user is redirected to the login page. And as a final step, we're going to test it out and make sure that everything works the way that we expect. And the first step is creating a new route and JSX page for our password reset requests. So we're going to go to our frontend folder, then the source folder, and inside of the components folder, I'm going to create a new page called password reset request.jsx. And for now, we're just going to copy over the code in our about.jsx page and paste it inside of the password reset request page. And in there we say password reset request. And we're also going to export that as a default. So we now have a page for password resetting. Then we're going to go to our app.jsx file and we're going to create a new route next to the register and the login paths for the password reset requests. And the reason that we're putting it right here is that we actually want the users to be able to visit this page even if they're not being logged in. If we would place them right here, they would be immediately redirected to our homepage because they're not being logged in and they're being protected by the protected route. So I'm going to copy over the route for register, and we are going to say that the path is going to be equal to request and then slash password underscore reset. And we also need to allocate the right element to that. And to do that, we first need to import the password reset requests from our components folder. And then we can use that as an element inside of our front-end application. And now it should be all good. And we actually also need to add the request/password reset to this string right here, which evaluates whether we need to have a navbar present on the page or not. And in this instance, we don't need that because we are going to reset our password. So we're going to add a clause in here that states that we also don't want to have a navbar when the path name is going to be equal to request/password reset. So let's save this and check out inside of our front end what we see when we visit the link. So we're now in our front end application, and let's see what happens when we go to /request and then /password underscore reset. And you can now see that we get to the page where we can actually reset our password. Of course, we also want to be visiting that straight away from the login page through a link. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to our login.jsx page, and on the bottom right here, we're going to add another link, and that link is going to point to our request/password underscore reset page. And in here, we state password forgotten, ? Click here. And if we now go to our front end, you can see that it is indeed here. And if we click on the link, it does work, but they are being put side to side, and I want to put them underneath each other. So to make sure that that is the case, we're going to do SX, which is basically a way to style this component. And we're going to do 2 of those parentheses right here. And in here, we specify that the flex direction needs to be equal to column. And this is going to make sure that these are located below each other instead of next to each other. And when we now go to our login page, you can see that we have the other link right here. And if we click there, we also come to the right page. So that is all working as it should. So now we've completed the first two steps, but if we go to our password reset request page, it is still very empty and it only has the text that we have put here from the about page. So we're going to go to our login.jsx page and just copy over a lot of the logic we have right there, because we can use that again and make sure that we can fill in the password reset request form. So I'm going to just copy over all of the imports that we're doing from our login form and paste them inside of our password reset request. And the same goes for these constants that are going to be handling the submission for us later on. And in terms of styling and the forms that we want to have inside of our password reset request one, we're going to copy over the entire return statement with the different forms, which we've all done in the previous videos already. Now, of course, when we look at the bottom here on our login page, we have the different links to register and the request password reset page, but we don't really need it. So I'm just going to leave this one empty. We have a submit button right here, which has the text of login, and we can change that to request password reset. Then we also have a password field right here. Well, we actually only need to supply the email address to our backend. And then we have the title of login for auth app, which we can change to password reset. Actually, let's make it request password reset. Okay, and what you will know from the previous videos is that the way that we submit data is through our Axios instance, and we're handling the forms with React Hook form. So if you don't know what is going on in here, I would request you to go to earlier videos where we've already completed the full process of creating the forms and also the logic for submitting this to our backend. Okay, so let's save this and see what our page looks like right now. And if we now click on password forgotten, you can see that we have a very basic setup right here with a request password reset text, an email, and then a button to actually make that request. And for now, that is actually all that we need. Now, from the previous video, you will remember where we need to go to actually reset the password, which is API/password reset on our Django backend. And in that particular API location, it expects us to provide the email address to actually reset the password right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to be changing the submission logic inside of our React.js frontend to send a request to this location right here and put in the data for email, and then that should trigger the email being sent to our email address. So right here we have the submission part, and you can see what we're doing here is we're actually posting this data to the login because this was from login. And in here we're going to change that because we want to go to API and then the /password_reset. And we are using the Axios instance, which we've created in previous videos. And there we already have specified the base URL right here. So we only need to provide the extension inside of our Axios request. Now we just saw that the only thing that we need to submit is the email. So I'm going to get rid of password because that's not relevant for this particular video. Now we also have a then response. And actually all what we want to do is we want to create some kind of a pop-up message that tells the user that it needs to check their email because we have sent further instructions for resetting the password over there. So let's build some logic to show a message, but only after we have successfully made the request to our API/password reset. So this message component, I probably also want to use that at some point in the future for other parts of my application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new component and I'm going to call that message.jsx. And in there, we want to define what our message should look like. Now, in this instance, it's just going to be a constant called message, and it is going to be equal to two round brackets right there. And then we can do an arrow function like this to complete our constant. And we're also going to return something inside of this message. And what I want to return is actually a box from Material UI, like this. And inside of this box, we want to put in some text. Now, since this is a reusable component, I'm going to put in text on the top as well, so that it's actually reusable and we can use it in multiple instances. And what we also want to do in the end is do export default message like this. And now we can actually use it in other parts of the application. Now I'm going to do a very basic bit of styling right here to make sure our message looks a little bit nicer. So I'm going to do SX and then open two curly brackets. And in there we can specify a background color. And for now we're going to set the background color to hashtag 69C9AB. And this is just some color that I found online, so no real relevancy there. And for the color, so which is going to be the color of the text, I'm going to set that to hashtag and then FFFFF, like this. And it should be a white color, so that should look quite nice. Now we can also say that the width of this message should be around 90% of the screen. And we can also specify that we maybe want to have a height of 40 pixels, like this. And this should make sure that our message is at least a little bit formatted for users. All right, back to our password reset request file. So we can start by importing our message from .message. Now what we want to do is we only want to see this message if we have submitted our data. So basically right here we want to do the action of showing the message. What we can do to realize that is very similar to what we are typically doing when fetching data, where we check first if the value of loading is equal to true, and only if that is the case, then we're going to be showing the message. So what we're going to do is similar as here. We're going to create a new constant, and that constant is going to be equal to show message with a comma and then set show message. And that is going to be equal to use state, and the default value is going to be false. And then we're going to change that after we have put in the response, we can make sure that we set show message equal to true. And by doing that, it should then show our message once we have defined that in our return statement. And I'm also just going to delete this arrow part because we don't really need it. Okay, then we need to put some logic inside of our return statement that is going to show the message in case this is true. And that is going to be the same as what it is on the home page, where we evaluate the variable, and based on that output, we are going to define what needs to happen. And actually make sure that these are not capitals, they need to be lowercase, the true and the false statements. And now we're gonna go underneath the background div, and in here we do a little bit of an evaluation. And there we are going to evaluate whether show message is true or not. If show message is true, then we want to return our message block, and inside of our message block we want to put in the parameter for the text, and the text is going to be equal to if your email exists, you have received an email with instructions for resetting the password, like this. Now it can also be that it is not the case that we have this message, and if it is not the case, then we're just going to define it as null. There nothing is really going to happen. Now the one thing I see right here is that message appears to be a reserved tag. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this constant to be named my message. And we're also going to export my message, And then we're going to go into our password reset and just import my message, and then also use my message as the tag right here. And now it looks a little bit better. All right, and this should be enough for that when we actually make this submission, it is going to set show message to true, which means that show message will be true, and it will show our message to the user. That's going to inform them that they have received this message. And let's also save the message file. Okay, I think it is time to check out if this actually works. So let's start our front-end server and see what happens when we try to make this request with an email address that is inside of our database. And we currently actually don't see anything, so let's inspect and see where we are going wrong. And if we click on console, you can see that use state is not defined inside of our file. So we're just going to go to our home page and copy over all of the stuff from React that we might need and put it on top right here, because we will need use state inside of this example, like this. So let's check out the result again, and hopefully it now works. Okay, so the page has successfully rendered, which is good news. And let's see what happens if we enter an email address that is currently in our database, and hopefully we will see the message. So I know that we have email@email.com. So let's request it and see what we see on the screen. All right, you can now see that we have a message popping up as soon as we request the password reset, which states that if your email exists, you have received an email with instructions for resetting the password. Now let's see how we can make this look a little bit better. So the first thing that you notice is that our screen right here has moved a little bit to the left. And when we inspect it inside of this console right here, you will see that it is actually inside of the form tag, because that's where we put it. So the first thing that I will be doing is I'm going to move this whole message thing and put it just below the background. So it's no longer included inside of the form, which will make sure that our white box is not going to move. Now, second thing that you can see is that it's still not looking that well. And actually, I would prefer it to have it just here on the top of the screen, and then it's completely fine. So we can do that by changing some of the styling elements that we can give this nice bar. So we're going to go over to our message.jsx, and inside of this sx statement, we can define that the position must be equal to absolute. So now it's just not going to take into account anything on the page. And if you now go back, you can see that indeed it does not take into account the white space anymore, but it is in a really inconvenient position because it needs to go up a little bit. And to do that, we can define that we want it to start on the top and then on 20 pixels from the top, like this. And if we now save it and we go back, you can see that it is in quite a good location for us, and also convenience for the user, because this doesn't disrupt the user. So this looks quite good, but I also want the text to be in the center of this green box, both horizontally and vertically. So let's make sure that we also can do that. And just for convenience, I'm going to space out my styling a little bit. Okay. And we can make sure that everything is completely centered by doing a display equal to flex. Then we can do justify content and put that to center so that it's horizontally aligned. And we can then also do align items, which is also going to be centered to do it vertically. And if we now go back, that we have a message that is completely in the center of our screen. Now, this will not win the beauty pageant in terms of styling, but you can make it as crazy as you would like with icons or with other techniques to make it look a little bit better. But for our use case, this is enough for now. So now let's see what happens if I actually put in an email address that exists so that we can see the email, and hopefully that will make sure that it all works. All right, so the email is now entered, and let's click on request password reset to see if we receive the email. And if I look inside of my Python backend, I see that we have a slight error, and that is because our URL does not end in a slash, and we have append /set. So we need to go back to our password reset request, and you will also see that for example, login, we always end on a slash, and apparently we have not done this in this instance. No, indeed. So right here, we add a slash, we save it, and let's try it again. So back in our request for password resets, I've entered my email address and now we're going to click the button again and hopefully it will work. And we see the message now that if our email exists, we have received an email with instructions, so that's good. And also inside of our backend, you can see that the request has a status of 200, so that means that it is working fine. So now let's check out the email. And when we now look inside of our email box, you can see that we have this password reset email that we've created in our previous video. Now actually we need to make a small change to the link of the password because we actually need to place a slash after the password reset section. So we're going to go back to our backend for a minute and then to the models.py file, and then we can make a small change to our receiver. Because in here where we construct the link, we need to just place a slash right here so that it's actually following a better convention. And I've sent the request again, and now you can see that it's password reset slash and then the token, and you can see that on the bottom left. So now let's make a route inside of our front end that is able to receive this link, including the parameter of the token. Now this might be a little confusing, but we are going to change the link to our front end once again, unfortunately. Because if we go to the models.py, we actually just want to have the side link and then the slash and then the password reset token. So we can just completely delete the token text and only have the actual token key as the extension of our local host server. And I've just made another request. You can now see that our link looks like this with just the token as the extension after password reset. And this is actually the way that we need to do it. So now inside of our React.js application, we need to make a route that has the ability to go to password reset and then slash a parameter. So we're going to go to our front end and then to source and then to our app.jsx file. And in there, we're going to create a new route. And you can already see it on the bottom here. The first thing that we need is password reset with a hyphen like this. So we're going to do slash password hyphen reset. And then we want to have a parameter in here. So we can define it by doing slash. And then we're just going to do a colon. And we're going to name this parameter token. And now our link knows that it needs to expect a token like this for when we are going to reset the password. Now, two things that we now need to change. The first thing is that we, of course, need to have a file for this password reset. So we're going to go to our components and I'm going to copy over the password reset request file. And I'm going to rename this to just password reset because this is where we're actually going to do the actual reset. Now inside of this file, we're going to change the name to password reset, and we need to repeat that name when we export it on the bottom. And there are a few other changes that we're also going to make. Now the first thing that we can change is the text of the message, because we can state, for example, your password reset was successful, something like that. Next, we can also change the request password reset to reset password. So they know that they can actually reset their password. And also you can see that we now have a box with a text field for email, but actually we need to have a password field in here. So I'm going to delete that and I'm going to get a password field from our login page because we already created that here, like this. And let's put that inside of password reset. And actually, we're going to duplicate this field right here. And I'm going to put it in here again. But we're going to call this confirm password as the label. And then password 2 as the name. And later on, we're going to apply some validation rules for the password so we have it there twice. For the button, we can also change the text and we can change that to reset password. And now the only thing we need to also change is the way that we submit this. because right now we submitted to API/password_reset, but we already saw in the previous video that we need to go to API and then /password_reset/confirm. And the things that we want to supply our database with is actually a password, but also the token. So the password, we can simply retrieve that from our form because we have a form called password right here. So we can get that value and then we have the new password the user wants to use. However, we also need to find the token. And to do that, we actually need to get the token from our URL and pass it inside of this field right here. And we can do that by using use params from React Router. Because in here, you can see that we can take use params from React Router DOM, and then we can extract a certain value by using use params. And then we can use that later on inside of our code. So back to our code, and we're going to make sure that we have use params from React Router DOM. And then we can define our constant of token, and we're going to set that equal to use params. And we can also do console.log for the token so that we can actually check if it takes the right value. Now, later on, ideally, when we submit this, we simply say that token is equal to token, and then it should provide our backend with the right information. And also what we've learned previously is we need to close this off with an ending slash there as well. Now, once we have made this submission, we of course would like to show the message, but after a while we want to be navigated to the homepage. Now, ideally what we want to do is we want to show the message for a few seconds and then redirect the user to the login page. So I'm going to slightly change my message and say your password reset was successful. You will be directed to the login page in a second. And then after set show message to true, we're going to add a timeout of, let's say, 2 to 3 seconds before we're going to go and be redirected to our login page. Now we can do that with something called set timeout. And then we open some round brackets, and then in there again some round brackets. And after the first complete set, we're going to do an arrow function like this. And then we can do navigate and then set that we want to go to the slash, which is our login page. And you can already see that we have the constant of navigate because we are using use navigate from React Router DOM, because this has just been a copy from our login page. And then we can do a comma after this curly bracket and define the number of time that we need to wait. And I'm going to set it to 2000, which equals to 2 seconds. So what should happen is it should show the message briefly, then it should wait 2 seconds and then navigate us to the homepage. But we will see in a minute if that actually happens. All right, so we now have our file ready. So we're going to go back to our app.jsx file. And in there, we can import the file. So we're going to import password reset from components.password reset. And we're going to put this inside of the element right here. Now, similarly as before, we need to make sure that this does not get the navbar. And to realize that, we need to go and add it to the no navbar. But instead of adding another request, I'm just going to add something that is going to check if it contains the word password, and if it does, then no navbar. And to do that, we can simply remove this part right here, and we can do location.pathname.includes. And then we specify what it should or should not include. And in this case, that is the word password, because no other routes has password in there. So it will apply that correctly. So I think this should be good. Let's now go to the latest email that I've sent myself, click on the button, and hopefully we will end up in our password reset form. And then we can also check if we see the token inside of our console. Okay, we're now in our email again, and if I hover over reset my password, on the bottom left you can see that it goes to password reset / and then the actual token. So now let's click this button and see where we end up. And you see that we're now arrived at our password reset form, where we have the two password forms beneath each other and the option to reset our password. And let's see if it gets our token value from the URL correctly. So we're inside of our console, and you can indeed see right here that it takes the token from our URL, and we're going to use that to send the right request to this link inside of our backend, and it should hopefully result in our password being reset. So let's see what is happening once we actually do it. So I'm going to set my password to testing321. I will also fill in this one, even though it doesn't really do that much at this point. And let's submit it, and hopefully we will see the message popping up right here, and then us being navigated back to the home page where we can use this password to log in. All right, and we see the message, and we are now being redirected to our login page. So that actually works exactly the way that we expect. So I've now inputted my email address right here, and let's see if testing321 now works to log in. And we are now inside of our application, so that seems to work just fine. And that is actually all for this video. Sorry for the errors that we encountered. It was a little bit programming as we go, but sometimes it is just like that. In the next video, we're going to continue, and we are going to focus on logout functionality inside of our application. And then after that, we will also focus a little bit on more messaging inside of this application. I want to thank you very much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.